Okay, so hi everyone watching on YouTube. It's one of the last weeks of the purrr documentation run through for the Tidyverse Docs book club that we've been running. Today we'll be carrying on where we left off the last week, which is a few weeks ago now, but where we were looking at the adverbs in purrr, and we'll be continuing where we left off with compose. Now, sadly, the document that I was working on before, that got lost in a laptop change, and I hadn't pushed any of the changes because I was planning to keep working on them. So I don't know if I sent that to anyone else. If anyone else does have it, it would be useful to get that back. If not, I could kind of go back through the video and just write the code out again. So yeah, if anyone does have it, let me know. But okay, so we stopped last time short of compose for like two kind of reasons. One was I didn't think I'd quite done it justice in the preparation, hadn't had time to really think much about it and like come up with some good examples. And then also we just kind of, I think we were getting low on time, but let's get into it. So like compose is nicely named, like nearly every tidyverse function, in that it kind of just tells you, well, I guess you need a bit of explanation, but the idea is just that you compose one or more functions. And the reason you kind of know that it's, sorry, not one or more, I guess two or more functions. But the reason you know that it can take more than two is that you've got like these dots here, and that these dots can be spliced with the triple bang or triple exclamation mark. Which basically just takes a list and just like undoes the list. But when that list is 3 or 4 functions, it's a bit different to it being like a normal R list. So dynamic dots and splicing kind of take care of that for you, which is, it's quite like an advanced property of the language. It's not always that intuitive, at least at the beginning, but it's pretty powerful when it's done by the pros, like the tidyverse guys. And then .dir is the way the function should be read. So when you compose 2 or more functions, what it basically does, you kind of put compose fg, and this basically, like it says, it's like running f, like g first and then f. So it's like whatever second here will actually get executed first. And then afterwards it will be F. So it's kind of like the pipe. One of the things the pipe does is lets you not do stuff like this, and lets you instead, I just have to use the local host, but like G, or rather the other way around, you'd want a G pipe F or something. But yeah, that is kind of quite similar, or at least when I was reading this, it looks really similar to me. And I think with more thinking time, you could probably come up with more nice ways of using compose than I have here. But okay, to make a function that we combine, what I thought was maybe a nice one is I quite often do something like sort and unique together, which is like you take a list of values, so like a random sample here, and then you might want to get rid of duplicates and sort them. So you're kind of creating a set of the values and ordering that set at the same time. So what I called it was ordered set, and just compose it with sort and unique. So what I'm feeding into compose is like the name of a function and another name of a function. I don't know if this means what primitive means, but it says like you should compose primitives. I think I can't remember the terminology, but like I don't know if it works if you do compose with a string. Have a look. Sort and unique. Okay, it seems like it does. Let's just say, I don't know, I want to do, oh, I got Copilot on. But I want to do, let's call that X for now, and then just like 1 to 4. Oops, that's kind of stupid because that was already sorted and a set. So 3, 3. Yeah, okay. So, and if we just put one here. Yeah, okay. So it does work. So you can feed in like a string or just the raw name, like the symbol. But we take this output draws, we get an ordered set, and we get all the unique values that we've just sampled out of in draws, and then they get ordered from lowest to highest. Yeah, like I think that's actually something I would probably actually use. I couldn't really think of many cases off the top of my head that weren't covered by negate or some of the other ones we're going to look at. But that's the basic idea, is like functions you want to use together, put them together. And it initially, like it does help that they take the same argument, like both sort and unique take X as arguments. I think that's probably integral, but I don't actually know that for sure. So what we're looking at is a different one is okay, like or here actually.
Sorry, just one question,
Yep.
Jack, if I may. Going back on the like them taking the same arguments and all, do you know if under the hood it's basically just using the pipe? Because I wonder if, let's say you're trying to mix and match like tidyverse and non-tidyverse, where maybe the data argument is not in the first position in one of your functions. I'm wondering if how much that matters.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it looks a lot like the pipe. But let's see if we just, is there any clues from like just compose first function? So it's like hard match. Okay, so that's just like checking them. Compose puts the, yeah, I don't think it's actually using the pipe, but then if you we'd have to start going through these things, like looking at them. But it doesn't look like it's actually using the pipe. It might be implemented similarly. To be honest, I have to probably really spend quite a bit of time looking at that to like go through and figure out how they're both properly implemented. But they could be, I mean, something that's worth considering, especially like you say, if you've got arguments in different places that you're expecting to be dealt with in a certain way. Okay, so what I was thinking is a different thing you might want to do is like tokenize everything in a document or corpus or like whatever. And one of the ways that you might do that is if you actually just get some, like, you've got this string and you strings this way, and you do split equals this. Oops. Then you get this like thing back, but it's a vector of characters inside a list. And I say nearly always what people end up doing is that so you unlist the split. And I think, I could be wrong though, I'd guess the string R1 has something like the output. But like these arguments, they don't let you say what the output should be. Like they don't let you say, give me a simplified version, unless you use bytes, but I don't think that's true. Yeah, it just asks you, like, okay, should your string be like a pattern, or should it be like a fixed pattern, as in like no regex, just take it as it literally is, or should it be Perl, like should follow, I can't remember which one Perl is, but 1/ for different things, like the different things you can do with Perl regex, which are all available to find online quite easily. But most times I'd ever want to use something like string split. I don't want the list back. I want the individual characters. So I was thinking, well, if you compose them into like some kind of like a clean split, how do you do it? Because unlist has some arguments, string split has some arguments. Like, how do you set the arguments for compose? So you you can't, let's go up to actually. You can't do it the way like I think you maybe would at the start. Where is this one? Like this one will error. It'll say like bad first argument. But if you were to do, you might think, okay, well, like, do I do something like this? And then you've got like some other problems, like okay, this time the X argument is missing. So instead, what you have to do if you're just using compose, a little spoiler is that later on we're going to look at another function that maybe helps. But you put them together, you've got your document, and then you call them, and you can see in clean splits argument here, like now it's got X split fixed equals. So you call it like this, and now it is like a clean split, if you like. It doesn't return a list, just returns a vector. You might want to name it something differently if you're actually doing this, because like clean split, probably not the best name. Yeah, it outputs that. So now I was thinking, well, like, okay, I had two functions that were maybe like quite interesting for different things. Got clean split and got ordered set. And I want to turn it into like a set of tokens. So get all of the tokens, the individual characters. In this case, you wouldn't always have to use characters as tokens, but you could use words, whatever, skipgrams or like subgrams, whatever they're called. But in this case, I want to get all of the unique characters in a set, all of the unique characters ordered, so that I've got an ordered set. And if you try to compose them like this, you get that same, you get like a different issue. Okay, so it says like here, split is missing with no default. So I solved that before by calling split equals up here, and it let me do it. But now when I do it, it says again, okay, like the split argument is missing and there's no default. And it's a bit, I guess it's a bit annoying. And it's potentially like, it's not obvious why it can't just pass that argument through. But then we have a look and say, well, does it matter if I change the order of these two? Like if I put ordered set first and clean split second, which means that clean split will be like evaluated first and order set will be evaluated second. Does it let me do it? And then it does. And then I get this like set of tokens, which is all the, like you say, the unique characters in that document that I had before. So like the next part, I guess, was looking back up here. We had these things like .dir, which said you can reverse the order. So it makes sense if reversing the order when we make the function, like up here, if we make the function differently to how it was erroring before, it makes sense that if we change the direction before, like in this call with the old way of doing it. So we've got like, this one was erroring before. We call it again with the same order, but we switch the direction so that it will do the first one, like, so it will do X, like this one first, and then ordered set should let us do it. And it does. Not sure how much use like this will ever be, but it's just quite nice maybe figuring out like these weird things. So it lets you get the arguments of the function that's going to be called first. It lets you specify them later on. There was maybe like a nice example in Bioconductor. They were looking at composing stuff, and they just made a function of like max and absolute. So instead of always like calling that like this, but yeah, so you get 3. And if you could, you had, say you had -4 here, then you get the absolute value, but the maximum of them, which it might be useful at some point. I'm not sure exactly when, but you can see here, we start at -10 as our mean. We have quite a high standard deviation. We draw out 100 numbers. and then probably this one is a minus 19, but we get the absolute value of minus 19. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I still think there's probably a lot more people have done with Compose or would do, but this one was just kind of like what came into my mind. But does anyone have any like saved up stuff? Has anyone actually used Compose before or got some ideas about what they would want to compose or like actually use it for?
So I've been having a look at it a couple of times, but then I always thought the pipe is just so much neater for me because I can also see in which direction it's going, which for me in Compose, I'm always puzzled. Like, is the first, like, how to read it in which direction? And then for me, it's just easier to go with the pipe because I don't see the advantage of using Compose in this context. But I also see that you have that as summary point 3, so
Yeah, no, I definitely I think I kind of agree. Like I can't really see it yet. What about you, Arthur? What do you think?
Yeah, same thing as Sarah, basically. I think I would probably almost always, well, probably not almost always, probably always favor the pipe. I think it's just I think troubleshooting would be far easier because then I could just, like run that little thing and like see, oh, okay, the problem is that passing to the wrong argument or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't see it's interesting that it exists. I don't see the value for me, but I'm happy to see, use cases in the wild.
Yeah, I felt there was what like I didn't have much time. I looked at this, I created a little thing called purrr. If we go to compose, saying you could compose these two bits. And I mean, yeah, you can just you can just do that with the pipe. But it is a little bit more compact here. Like it's a bit easier to read if you do something like this than this. Which, like, I think if you're doing the same workflow a lot, it's maybe gonna be useful in these kind of situations, or like when you're writing big pipes and putting them into one function might make code more readable. But then what I was thinking is like, is it fine to just keep composing functions? And say if you've got like quite a long pipe, if you tried to work that back out into compose and you switch the direction so that it was going like first function, then second, then third, then fourth, like firstly you're gonna have a big problem when you try to name that function. Like, if you actually really want to compose it, like it's gonna have to be like a sentence long function. And then secondly, probably someone else that comes along and tries to use it is probably just gonna prefer like the pipe, I'd say. I don't know, it seems like you're violating some software principles, like functions should kind of have one job or do one thing really well. If you're like composing a bunch of functions, then you're kind of intentionally going the other way and going like this function should do probably multiple things. That's what I thought, at least. I was thinking like it probably isn't okay to just keep doing this.
But if, for example, you have this workflow that you do with a lot of data sets, like just in the example that you showed, then maybe it makes sense, right? So it's maybe 4 functions that you always pipe. I suppose in that kind of setting would make sense.
Yeah, because you can like let's say you got like you got strings split like this. Right? Let's throw them up here. I don't know if anyone got Copilot the other day to see how it is in RStudio, and it really doesn't work well with our Markdown. Like I just want to see if it actually tries to do something here, but it destroys all your backticks and stuff, and like wreaks havoc with code blocks and stuff. I don't know if anyone else has tried it, but I don't think I'd really recommend it yet. See this? I know that still work.
Is it better if you're in visual mode? I know it looks weird, but then it can't destroy the backticks, right?
Oh, what, like that? Yeah, I haven't even tried. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it does. Like, well, yeah. As well, what really, sorry, this is like for people watching on YouTube, this is a complete tangent, but what really annoys me is I love RStudio's IntelliSense. So if I'm using string split and I'm looking at that for the arguments, because I just want to get this pop-up, it will often, Copilot will do something stupid and suggest something. And then when you press tab, it takes Copilot's thing instead of like filling out the arguments for you. Like you tab now or something and it do Copilot's stupid suggestion. But these ones, like you can pipe them, the ones that I compose together. And I guess in that case, it might be nicer to just use compose and stick it in like a private package.
I'd be inclined to make like a function actually for just readability. Like somehow I feel like there's probably like broader readability of just using pipes rather than compose. Like if they achieve the same ends, then I would venture to guess that more people would more easily be able to read the piped version than the composed version. But that's just me.
Yeah, I think generally they would, but if you've got something that clear cut, like, and you could name it better than I did, or like you just called it set brackets and it was unique and something else. Like, I don't know, I could see if you didn't use R much, it might be useful. But if you're used to the pipe, yeah, it's definitely just seems a lot easier.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's like a idiom of programming that's perhaps more familiar to folks from like JavaScript or some other coding backgrounds. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder as well, like, because you can use it with map and you can use it with other things. It's like, but then you can just make your own function. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd have to think about it more, like see some, like you said earlier, I'll see some good use cases. I do want to just remember like this bit. It's like we were getting an error here. But if we go down to partial is like partial is a different adverb. And kind of like it says, it lets you partially apply a function filling in some arguments. So if you've got a function like string split, which if we look at it, is this the way you do it again? Wait, formals. String split. So you X split, fix, Perl, use bytes. If I just like know that when I'm making that character level tokenizer, I always want split equal this. And the whole idea with partial is you can do that. Let's actually just go up to them. We'll just go through here. But like the whole idea with partial is that you can do that. You can set like your own function is a partial version of string split, where that function now has kind of like the argument set of split equals. I think you still keep, let me have a look at, you still have to do something with so these two arguments, they don't have a value, like a default value. So they're mandatory arguments. So I think you still have to do something with X, or something still has to get past X. But like these guys effectively don't exist in this function now, partial split. Oops, I forgot to actually got to run the code, so let's go up. We remember that we were getting that error before when I tried to do something like compose string split unlist. Let's just go up to where I had it. And we were in here that we were getting this. Where's it gone? Thought I kept this bit in. Where's the error? I guess it was here. So when I composed so when I was looking at it initially, I had a different version where I had these two more basic functions being put together with partial. So let's, if you compose string split and unlist, and oops, just call that X for now, and you just call X on the document, you get this split thing, which we remembered, like, okay, and on this one, I think I can not do it. I'd have to put doctor equals forward. And even then, that's not like me because that's not intercompose. But like this isn't working the exact way that I'd maybe want it to. Whereas if I do partial split, where I set split equals this value already, then unlist split, unlist split on this is a document does work, but it's, yeah, I like it saved that value that I had here of the split, and then it lets me call this function, whereas it wouldn't do that if I tried to compose unlist with string split without setting the split value. I'd have to do that thing before where we set the argument when we call the function. But what happens if I've made this unlist split function and I now don't want to split anymore on just like nothing, like an empty character? I want to split on spaces. So I want to change it to like a really basic attempt at a word level tokenizer without taking into account punctuation, everything. It won't let you do this because you're feeding in split, and it's understanding that that's actually like a duplicate because you've already set split up here for that part of the function that has it. Now when it tries to like deal with this argument, it runs into kind of a I'm already here error. So like when you do set arguments, you trade a bit of flexibility, but it maybe did make it easier to compose something, which, if you don't think there's any point in composing, is not a very big win. But like a different way of looking at what it actually did is that it reduces the number of arguments that a function has. And Bioconductor make that point. They give like a little example of it. But like you can see it can be quite useful partial. Like if you know there's some functions that you use that have got all these like esoteric arguments or things that you don't normally want to take care of, then you can create your nice own little version of them by just selecting the arguments that you want. Again, it's probably like need more thinking or need to see more people use it or come into situations where I would actually want to use it. But again, same questions like, does anybody use this before? Does anybody think it's useful?
If we could go back in time and was it string as factor equals false?
Oh yeah. I guess that plays into the like or just any mandatory arguments thing. Set them. It's pretty nice. I guess it reduces typing as well, or it can. That's maybe, I don't know if that's what its primary purpose is, but it would be good at that.
I guess it's kind of a nice name in a sense. I was thinking like HTML partials or something like that. So I mean, you're basically like kind of filling out some bits in a template. In this case, the template being like the functional, like the formals.
Yeah.
The one thing I think I may have missed, Jack, is like one question is, could you? I'm wondering, is there a way that you could, like, let's say you're using the partial version of a function, right, that you've created for yourself. Could you then override the bit that partial is kind of setting for you?
Yeah, so this is what I meant about like.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Up here, say if you change your mind, like I want to unsplit, like unlist split on the document, and I want to change the split from like just an empty character. So just split on everything, just take everything, turn it into like one byte or one token or whatever. I want to change that to split on spaces. You get this argument where it can't resolve like the two splits that it thinks it has. Like it doesn't just go back and say, okay, like undo this thing here. You just can't do it, as far as I know. Now, it could be that I just don't know how to use it fully. It's quite likely. But it at least wasn't immediately obvious. And it was something that was drawing errors when I was just playing around with it. So I think you'd have to go back and change it in there. Or you'd have to just like not use partial, which obviously defeats the whole point in the first place. Yeah, okay, so before we were looking at negate, or did we look at negate? I think before I showed some examples of composer, I was thinking, oh, cool, like can you string detect with the exclamation mark? And then I realized like string detect at some point just got a negate argument anyway. But there are other use cases like not null. So you got the function is null, which is a predicate, as in it returns a true or false. You just negate that and you flip it. So if it was null, like now, not null just says, okay, if it's not null, return true. And yeah, it's just like the nice flip of the truth value of a predicate. So if we look, we've got X is null. If we put it in not null, we get false. But Y, which is not null, we get true. Thinking like, I don't know if it would ever come up in like a coding interview or something, or I don't know what, like they might be quite nice ways to just impress somebody. I don't know if it ever would be, but you check if something's even by seeing like the modulo of two, when you like modulo it by 2, does it equal 0? Is there no remainder when you divide by 2? And you know, if that is the case, there's no remainder, then the number's even. So like, is 4 even? Yes, 4 is even. Is 5 even? No, it's not. It's okay. How do you check if it's odd? So it's like, you wouldn't want to go through and go, does it divide by 3? Does it divide by 5? Does it divide by 7? You know, all that stuff. Obviously, you just want to flip this one. So you just negate it. So like, is 4 odd? Well, if it returns true when you check if it's even, then it's not odd. So otherwise, basically, return true. Obviously, you'd want to put like some stop if nots, or like some input validation, and like make sure they're putting in an integer, and or like all those kind of things. But if you've got a function that reliably tells you if something's even, you just flip it around and you've got is odd. But I was thinking sometimes they're like, you got like the special functions, I guess, or operators, the pipe and in, and they're a bit like, they're just a bit grim to type. And it's, until you've done it a couple of times, it's not always obvious how you negate them. So you've got something like this, you want to check, is stuff like the values of cylinder, like, are they 2 or 4? And keep them if they are, and get rid of them if they're not. This by itself is like, it's kind of not so bad. It does what it says on the tin. It's not, in my opinion, it's a bit weird that we have these things, because like we need to have like, everything is a function in R basically, and this is a function too, but it's just like you just call it in a really different way to other functions. So you can turn it into like the normal kind of function that you would like call your own function. So I don't think this is much of an improvement at all. It's actually like got more brackets at the end, and it kind of looks a bit, it looks a bit grim. Does the same thing. But the reason that I went with this example is at the start of using like dplyr filter and like in, you might think, well, okay, if I want not in, I should just put an exclamation mark here. But then you get a syntax error. And it's obviously it's pretty easy to like unravel that or fix that error. You can just put the exclamation mark here, so you negate the whatever like this stuff evaluates to. But you could also, when you're doing that, like not this, then the pipe, like the thing that's tricky, maybe it's just nicer to have something like this, and just check like, are they not, is still not 2 or 4? I mean, obviously you can just like sil does not equal 2, or sil does not equal 4, or like sil is greater than 4 in this case. Like there's loads of obvious like ways you would do the same thing, but I guess the whole point is just like negating some stuff might be handy. Like it's a bit nicer than this potentially. Yeah. What I was thinking is like, could you combine them? Like, could you compose not in easily to go with filter? Was what I was wondering. But then I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on this, but filter does some like data masking for you. I don't know how easy it would be to do that in compose. And
But it would be cool. It's kind of like the discard and keep stuff, right?
yeah, it's like the other adverbs. Were they went in keep? Were they in adverbs, or were they in a different part of the documentation?
Ooh,
I think they were a different one. But what are they? So they're like,
I think they're called discard and keep.
yeah, but where we covered they're predicate
Yeah,
functions.
they're predicate
Yeah,
functionals.
there you go. Yeah, I suppose like you wonder if you could make your own. I know that's like a challenge, not a challenge, but like you want to tackle something that might be fun. It's like, can I just make a function called like not in that is pipe friendly and filters for me so that I don't call it like mount cars filter not in, but you call it like mount cars not in, and then sil C4. I'm pretty sure you would be able to if you thought about it.
That's a neat one, Jack. I may, I don't know, if I have free time, I may try my hand at that, because for me it kind of appeals to me. I'm coming from Stata, where there's a like command like drop, so like you drop observations if they satisfy a criterion. So and that doesn't exist in I mean, to my knowledge, within like tidyverse. Instead, it's like filter down, like take those things that aren't a certain, don't have a certain set of characteristics.
Yeah, and get rid of them, because you do it with like, yeah, you do it with filter, right? So you do like that.
Yep.
Yeah, might be nice to have it as a. And I'm just thinking, not going to try to do it live because that'll probably just be really embarrassing. Like fumbling around, but I might have a look at it too, see if I can make it work. Didn't really have any gotchas. I suppose the only thing is like you want to end up negating twice, like falling into a double negative trap or something, but it's kind of obvious. Like it's just a logical thing not to do. And the last one though in adverbs is auto browse. And this was like, you can kind of tell I had the least time as we went down for each one. And here I just really had no time. So I went into auto browse and I had a look at it, and I grabbed this example right from the documentation. I guess a quick question before we do this, does it like, are you guys familiar with browser?
Yes.
Not really, no. I think I might be clicking on it sometimes when it shows up, but I've never like actively typed it into the console.
Yeah, well, browser's something that, like, when I discovered it, I was like, I wish I had known this earlier. And then I was listening to wait, it's Joe Chen, isn't it? Not Winston Chang. There's like the two guys who run Shiny. It's Joe Chen. He was saying, like, browser is good, but you should be able to figure out if your code's going to error and when beforehand. Like, you should be able to reason about your code and not just rely on something like browser to fix it. But I think there are times where that's not true, and that browser just really helps you understand an environment or something that you can't access like easy. I'm sure you didn't mean it like never use browser. I think it's more of a warning, like, don't rely on this. But to demonstrate browser, let's just like make a function. So function will take a value, and we'll say like y equals x plus 1. Now, if you browse it in here, and this is silly because, like, we're not really doing anything. But let's say you call my func and you set x equals 2. Browser takes you right into the function as the function is. So if you type ls, you see that you've got x, and you can see, well, at this point in the function where I am right here, what's the value of x? And the value is 2 because that's where I called it. You go to the next step, the next step, and you do ls again, and now you see, like, inside your function at that point, you've got two variables. Those variables are x and y. Now, x should still be 2, but y should be x plus 1. And it is. So you can like interact with them. So if you're developing a function, it's obviously not a very good example because it's just super basic, but you might be getting an error in your function somewhere down the line, and you can get the values in here and see if you could do stuff with them. Like, oh, could I times x by 4? And you get an error. Or could I times it by string? It would tell you, like, oh, you would get an error if you did that thing. And it keeps you in the browser. So it keeps you in the environment as the function's running. I do have some really good examples of how you could use browser better, but as it's not like the thing for this, so it's probably not worth going into. But that's basically what browser is. It's like, get into the function scope, the function's environment, see the variables at different points, execute code, see the variables, like develop the function, or develop whatever you want to do. But this time, for their example of auto browse, what they did, they say there's this function f, and you've got a value y. Did I put that in? It seems like, I know it belongs there. Okay, I don't really see what's happening with y here. But okay, function f, whenever x is greater than 5, like, stop and message exclamation marks to stop the thing running. Otherwise, just like return x. So say you're mapping over them, we are in an interactive, so we don't need that. But we called auto browse, and what that says is, like, whenever you error, if you like wrap auto browse around a different function, this says whenever you meet an error, open up the browser so that the person who is running the thing can get to the exact point that the function errored, or like the functional, I guess in this case, errored. At which point in the iteration you get the error, and then you can access the value by going in. So if you go, like, you type ls here, you get classes, expression, handlers, parent, and I don't know what classes would do. Okay, so it's an error. Promise already under evaluation, recursive, default argument reference earlier problems. So I guess telling you, so you've got an error class, and that's like the message that comes with, or the explanation. Handlers, okay, is the function. Can you call that? Okay, so yeah, it's something like that. But that's what it's saying is, like, okay, that was the function that led to the error. But then you've got, like we said before, you've got parent n. And if you go names of parent n, when you're in the debugger, you can see the different things. So, like, you go parent m expression, get that same thing. And then if we look at I, it tells us what the value of I was, 6. So that says we like leave the debugger, we've quit. This function, we'd expect it to error as soon as it gets to 6, which it did. So like you mapped 1 to 6 and you auto browse. If we would change this to 10, it's the same thing. Parent m by will be 6 because it stops, reaches an error. Like it doesn't need to tell you 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 below. It just stops at the earliest time that it can. Puts you into the debugger. You activate with ls, and you have a look in parent m. Oh, yeah, easier to use names. And then you can see what's in them, and then you access them as you normally would. That's what auto browse does. Yeah, does anybody have questions on auto browse? I probably can't answer them, but
more a comment. I feel like it would be really convenient if within this function there were some messaging about kind of context, right? So which element are you in, instead of having to search in the parent environment. Anyway, I feel like that would be nice.
Yeah, I thought that because it took me a few minutes earlier to like figure out, well, how do I actually see where I am? Like, how do I actually get any information about what happened? So yeah, I completely agree. That might be a nice improvement.
Maybe there aren't too many people using it, because I feel like this would, I don't know. It feels like this would be a rough edge that a lot of people would notice and complain about. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've never heard of it before either. Right, so I gotta let the dog out a second. She's going. Yeah, so I forgot to end for YouTube. So let me just end.